take series on a good day, on a good week. NightMare, he can pop off. He can pop off. And here we go. Spawning in the bottom right-hand corner, we have the South Korean Zerg player representing Onside Gaming. It is Solar. Spawning in the top left, we have his opponent. We have the South Korean Protoss player representing Matcherino Esports. It is NightMare. Matcherino Esports slaps. Oh, it slaps, Poppy. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool that Matcherino, for a long time, of course, they did support StarCraft when it comes to tournaments and sponsorships as well for tournaments. Of course, with coupon codes, and they had a big deal with OSC Esports for a very long time as well. And if you remember, there was a moment where they kind of stepped away from supporting a lot of these smaller events. They kind of changed their policies, and they were, you know, stepping away a little bit. And we didn't get to see as much from Matcherino, but clearly the people working at Matcherino, they have a soft place in their hearts for StarCraft. They're, of course, supporting KSL. They hosted some of their own events. I believe they were co-sponsors with the Africa Champions Cup, if I'm not mistaken, with Africa and Matcherino. They've been sponsoring and funding show matches, and now they even have their own team. They have their own pro team, which is really cool to see. So much love to Matcherino. Always doing what they can for StarCraft. And we'll see if that's going to be enough to overcome the might that is Solar. Solar, one of the strongest Zerg players in the world. Recently has been notorious for being the Serral Slayer. He, speaking of slapping, he did slap Serral around in WTL. It was crazy. Not just in WTL, but in Gamers 8 as well. Like, in recent times, Serral has been having, Solar has been just looking dominant over Serral in those ZvZs. But StarCraft is about more than just a mirror matchup. It's more than just one matchup. It's about, you know, all these three races and how they interact with each other. All these players as well. You know, even if Solar can just go to town on Serral, NightMare, he's a different kind of player. Different beast. Different race. So we'll see. We'll see how NightMare can compare. So far, Stargate opener. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too fancy. We got spoiled earlier. We casted Estrella in a PvZ, and we bore witness to, you know, fast fleet beacon into carrier rush. We saw Twilight Council into Glaive Adepts. From NightMare, even though he is a bit of an aggressive player, I do expect the early game to be pretty normal and pretty standard. I expect Stargate openers. Now, this could lead into an 8-gate 3-base all-in, for example. Like, he can still be aggressive off of 3 bases, but I don't expect anything too crazy early on to begin with. As the Adept is just going to be poking and prodding, trying to find a way in. Is going to be forced back by Solar. Solar's just going to be droning happily, just making sure he keeps up with the Adept. And that first Oracle is going to be rallied across the map. Is going to be moving out. There are some Protoss players that bank up their Oracles and try to have more of a surprise factor, but alas, NightMare is not one of them. He's just sending it across the map immediately. Likewise, Solar also diving in for a scout. Trying to get a read on what's going on, and the Oracle won't find too much damage. Gets a drone. Oh my god, gets 2, gets 3. Oh my god! 4 drones! And does escape with its life. Did take quite a lot of hull damage, unfortunately. But 4 worker kills for hull damage isn't too bad for NightMare. As long as he's able to keep this Oracle alive, regenerate those shields, and make use of it later on. As it is going to meet up with the first, or with the second Oracle. Looking for more damage, but again, NightMare, he has to be careful. He has to babysit that weakened Oracle. Behind this, we do have a Forge and a Twilight Council. Oh, good target firing out of Solar. Does force NightMare back. This time did not get a drone. Was not able to pull that off. And NightMare is going for a standard follow-up. Twilight Council, Forge, this should be for +1 and Blink. Dragon Scales is a good map for an 8 gate, so we'll keep our eyes on him. We'll see if he does head in that direction. As Solar does get eyes on the third base, he catches a probe. Nothing too major, but Solar, he's just keeping NightMare honest, as it is indeed going to be Blink on the way. Romar Protoss. Likewise, behind this Solar, he's working towards his 4th. We have Safety Roach Warren on the way, +1 melee. Again, this Roach Warren is a little bit later than usual. We would expect to see it at around the 5-minute mark, but Solar, who was being a little bit greedier, he got it at around the 5:20 mark instead. So cutting some corners, and Solar, he shouldn't be punished for it. There's no reason to rush into Roaches this early on, especially if NightMare isn't being aggressive. So Solar should be able to get away with this droning. Whereas NightMare is just going to be vying for map control. He's taking his gases. At his third base. So he's just trying to force Solar back. Solar expands, takes another base. Looks like his Lings are going to get caught out. NightMare is able to keep up. For a moment, he was dragged out of position, and this isn't going to be a big pickoff, but does force a warp in, almost gets a kill on the gateway. And because these gases were taken, the reason why I brought that up is this isn't going to be a 3-base all-in. We're droning up even further, we're probing up even further, and we're taking up into a Templar Archives. Storm is on the way, 4th base is on the way, so NightMare, basically he's taking a more defensive position. NightMare is skipping warp-ins, he's keeping his Stalker count low so we can afford to tech up even further and afford to get a 4th base and probe up as well. So interesting choice, but again, a very defensive, very tech-heavy playstyle here from NightMare. This play usually leads into double Robo Colossus production, but again, NightMare, he's going for his own twist, he's going for Storm instead. Storm and Archons. Now, upon seeing this, Solar, he needs to quickly identify that his opponent isn't being aggressive and take advantage of him. And this will be Solar expanding, taking a 5th, droning up to 80 and taking up into Hive. For now, he's focusing on his Ling Roach. He has droned up to 80, so he has a really good economy. He's working on +2, on +1 range. He's actually going to be threatening an attack here at this 3rd base. And forcing a reaction. Solar, he's going to be committing here with just pure Ling Roach. Sending everything across the map. No infestation bit in sight, no Hive in sight. Just very committed at a Solar. Can he break NightMare? Storm is done, by the way. Oof, that's a big Storm on the Lings. Upon seeing the Storm, Solar, does he feel confident that he can still pull this off, or will he transition? Will he tech up? There it is. Now, this is a late infestation pit. I think the big reason for this is because Solar, he didn't know that Storm was a thing. He didn't know what kind of direction NightMare was teching into. So now that he saw the Storm, he's like, oh, okay, like, clearly I'm not going to kill you. Infestation pit is going to be for Hive, Vipers, potentially Lurker Tech, Ultras. We're going for a longer game. And NightMare has gotten away with this for the most part. I say for the most part because, oh god, that's a lot of stasis traps. NightMare, yeah, he's deflecting his opponent at every turn. Solar, he's trying to get on top of these High Templar if possible. Rolling on forward, forcing out some storms. High Templar! Bailings, they will connect. Only one High Templar survives. And Solar, he collapses on this army. A big pickoff. What was that? 6 High Templar go down. An expensive loss for NightMare. The pressure was on Solar to find some damage to make this army worth his while, and he did it. He caught so many High Templar. Meanwhile, behind this, NightMare is taking up into Skytoss. Fleet Beacon is done. Now, because he has successfully gotten into Storm and he has 4 bases, I do think this is a good opportunity to start working towards carriers. But where's the second Stargate? Where are the carriers? Like, we haven't really started. We're working towards that direction, but before he can really get there, Solar, he's in his face. Once again, rolling with more Banelings. No reaction. NightMare does not pull away. The entire mineral line goes down. He was doing such a great job initially defending, but things are just snowballing out of control. He lost his High Templar, lost his mineral line. More High Templar being focused down. There's only one High Templar left. And Solar, he's breaking NightMare before he can get into Skytoss, before he can commence carriers, before he can really get into this fourth and have it pay for itself. Every High Templar, every Archon just went down, and Solar, he's just snowballing out of control. He has a broken NightMare. Yeah, just things escalating very quickly out of control, as even these Stalkers are falling. Behind this, the Hive is done. We're working on Adrenal, +3. Solar, he can kind of do whatever he wants from this point, as he's cleaning up whatever is left at this third base. He doesn't have to take up into Ultras or into Aspire. He can start throwing that down just in case, but for the most part, he can stick to Ling Roach. I mean, the creep has gotten out of control. In the face of his opponent, Solar, he's getting a 6th base. It has just become too much. Solar has to back off, rebuild his Banelings, remax his army. NightMare, he has a moment to breathe, but there's just so much he needs to do. Shield batteries, overcharge, warp in High Templar to just accumulate energy for force fields, for storms. The force fields are good. But they're not going to be good enough, as the Banelings then make their way onto the sentries. And it looks like Solar, with this second wave, should be able to not just break the third this time, but also break the entire defensive line here of NightMare. GG gets called. And Solar takes game number 1. GG. GG, well played. NightMare, he almost made it. He almost got away with it. He almost got away with just taking up very quickly and solidifying himself on 4 bases. A lot of it did come down to him losing all those High Templar. If you remember, there was that moment where Solar was maxed and he was trying to pull apart his opponent. He was distracting NightMare on the right-hand side, and he got on top of 6 High Templar. 6 High Templar, full of energy. Bear that in mind, full of energy. They all had at least a storm, some of them 2 storms. And the Banelings connected, they killed, I want to say, 4 High Templar, and then the Roach Ling got on top of the rest as well. And when you're playing this style, your High Templar, they're your lifeblood, you know? Like, they are the things keeping you alive. They are the backbone of your army. And for them to get picked off like that, that is just something you cannot afford to do. GG, well played. Solar does take game number 1, and we are going to be getting ready for game number 2. Oh boy. Just before we get into game 2, I do need to quickly set up a Zoom call, so I will be a moment. Do need to take a moment to set something up. So we're going to be going on a short break. I know, ideally, we go on a break like after a series concludes, but going to be going on a short break. When we return, we'll have the rest of the broadcast and the rest of the series. I won't be too long. Just a moment. Un momento, papi. Un momento. Take this moment to hydrate your hydras, stretch your roaches, massage your marines, enjoy the duct tape. Enjoy some Shelby. I love Shelby. And welcome back everyone. Again, just a short break here, a short intermission in this series as we get ready for game number 2. Just had to quickly do something IRL, but we are back with game number 2 of Solar versus NightMare again. Pretty close. I say pretty close. I mean, game 1 was pretty straightforward, I should say. You know, Solar, he was looking to try and slow down and cripple NightMare before he could really get into his final form, as NightMare was just being very defensive, taking up all the way up to 4 bases, but was unable to successfully get into Skytoss. If you remember, he had a Stargate, he had a Fleet Beacon, but couldn't quite get into his second or into his Skytoss production because Solar was in his face at every turn, knocking down that front door. Was able to stop him before we could really get the ball rolling. And here we go. We're getting into game number 2. As spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have our South Korean Zerg player representing Onside Gaming. It is Solar. Leading the series 1-0 and spawning in the bottom left-hand corner. We have his opponent, we have the South Korean Protoss, representing his new team, Matcherino Esports. It is NightMare. Now, the other surprising thing to me, at least, about what NightMare was doing in that last game is that typically this really tech-heavy defensive style isn't done on Dragon scales. The reason why I say that is because the rush distance by ground is really short. Something that we did take note of towards the end of the game, but maybe we should have earlier on, is that, again, because the map is so small, because the rush distance is so short, we saw the creep spread really getting out of control and touching tips with the third base of NightMare and the fourth base of NightMare as well. Like, the creep was very quickly out of control, and that just meant that reinforcements and even queens could get across the map that much faster as well, to really just keep the pressure on NightMare and just not allowing to breathe, not allowing to really get comfortable. So yeah, I was just really surprised to see that out of him, just because these big, committed, aggressive styles are that much stronger on these smaller maps like Dragon Scales, like Royal Blood as well, or Babylon actually is what I was getting at, Dragon Scales and Babylon. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned for NightMare. Wasn't too fond of his build of choice for that map. I do think that that style can work better on Ancient Cistern, but I don't expect NightMare to do the same thing twice. That's the thing, right? Even though I do think that that playstyle and the build of choice from game one would do better here on Ancient Cistern, I expect to see something different instead, which is what's concerning to me. So we'll see. We'll see what NightMare decides to do, what he decides to whip out on Ancient. For now, Lings are going to be vying for map control, chasing back the probe. Solar working on his third base, saturating his natural, working on his third. And so far, nothing too crazy, nothing too out of the norm. It is going to be a Stargate opener from NightMare, should be into Oracles. Overlord is going to be chilling here, camping that natural base, trying to get a read on what is going on, what exactly his opponent is up to. As this should be an Oracle first, and there we go. An Oracle first is coming out from NightMare. So everything's looking pretty normal and pretty standard so far. And even if we head towards a third base, the Twilight Council, and a Forge, you know, I'm really looking at what comes after that, though. Like, are we going to go for a defensive tech-heavy style, but go for Colossus instead of Storm? Like, that's definitely an option. That is an option for NightMare. We could opt to not take the gases at the third base and go for a 3-base all-in and just go mass blink Stalkers. That could work well on Ancient Cistern. It works well on any map, to be fair. The power of Protoss is, if you set up a proxy gateway, it doesn't matter how large or how small a map is, like, you can reinforce just as quickly as any other map with those gateways. Ooh, as the army moves out and NightMare's third is exposed. Uh-oh. NightMare, a little bit of a misstep here, is forced to cancel the third, and this is not a good start for our Protoss. Ay, ay, ay. A big loss here for NightMare. At the same time he gets across the map, he is getting drone kills. 5 workers go down, but is this worth it? The reason why so much damage was done is because the Adepts, they were not at home to defend. 5 drones. The Oracles are forced to stay back. The Adepts have to be rewarped in. And I do feel like 5 drones is worth delaying the third base, as Lynx hit the field once again. Just keeping tabs on things. We do have a Twilight Council follow-up. If you notice, we are missing something. Okay, there we go. I was like, where's the Forge? The Forge is throwing down a delayed Forge. I'm pretty sure a big reason for this is just because of the delayed third. The extra Adepts that had to be warped in. So basically, the build of NightMare, because of the cancel in this third base, has been disrupted. And it is a little bit wonky, a little bit janky. Not as clean as it usually would be. As he does move out across the map, he's got 4 Adepts, he's got a couple of Oracles to support, and I mean, He's getting some value, getting a couple of tumors, shaving off some Lings. I don't think he can really threaten a dive. There are plenty of Lings to keep up with those shades. But he's at least keeping Solar busy. And as long as NightMare doesn't lose anything, like, this is fine. Dragging the Queens out of position. It is going to be Blink and +1 behind this. So our standard Blink Stalker follow-up. Oh, the Lings, they do collapse on this army. The Oracles are forced to activate their Pulsar Beams. And Lings do back off. As they want to force another activation as well, trying to bait NightMare. And as the Adepts are busy here on the left-hand side, the Lings are maybe even setting up a counterattack. As they do just ignore the army. They get across the map. They catch a probe. Not much else. The gateway count's looking pretty high. We're up to 6 gateways at this point. We do have the economy to really sustain that. Now, we'll see if we move up from here. There we go. 7th gateways across the map. We have not taken the gases at the 3rd. This is a 3-base all-in from NightMare. Mass Blink Stalkers. I mentioned earlier that the power of this build is that it doesn't matter how large or how small the map is, you can reinforce across the map just the same distance with this proxy gateway. The problem is that this has been slowed down, so this isn't as powerful as it should be. But these Stalkers, they have arrived, and Solar is giving up this base. Is pulling back. Roaches are on the way. +1 melee is done, but the hatchery will fall. A good start for NightMare. At the same time, though, a big Ling counterattack does deny the 3rd. 3 probes go down and no mining happening whatsoever. And we have more Lings on the way. So far, the transfuses are on point, and Solar, he's holding with his Queens, holding with his Road Ravager. Lings attempt to go for a run by, but no, it looks like NightMare has more than enough to defend. But he was forced to warp in at home. He was forced to warp in back at home. The Lings, they try to get on top of this proxy gateway. So far, NightMare, he is gaining ground. Oof, takes some battles to the face, so he's reading out quite a lot of these Stalkers. Stasis Trap does get baited out, and Solar once again going for another counterattack. As NightMare moves out, he exposes the 3rd. And you may not be thinking this is too huge, but again, because we're all in, NightMare, he doesn't have the best economy to begin with, and he's losing every single probe at this 3rd base. Now he doesn't have the economy to sustain 8 gateways. He's going to be running out of warp-ins. He's going to be running out of steam. If Solar can clean up this army, then NightMare, he won't be able to reinforce. He's getting a lot of the Queens, though. Almost every single Queen goes down, but they bought enough time. Biles once again connecting. And Solar is holding. He's expanding, taking a 4th base elsewhere. His 3rd base has been left untouched. Even though Solar did lose a hatchery earlier, he didn't lose any drones. His economy has been beautiful behind this. More than I can say for NightMare. NightMare, he does rotate around, and he is getting on top of this 4th, and he may force another kill. Up. Does get a kill in the 4th. A good pick off. If only he hadn't lost his mineral line. As he is keeping the pressure on. And NightMare now with 2 armies, denying the 4th base. Containing Solar. +2 melee now begins. Now the downside to what NightMare is doing is this. Like, his army is fragmented. These Stalkers, they're being picked apart. The Lings are going ham. At the same time, NightMare, his other force here on the right can maybe get on top of the 3rd. As Queens are being brought forward. Once again, the Stalkers are going down. It feels like Solar, he has enough of a production or economy behind this to just keep this going. Can he ever take a fourth, though? Can he ever take a fourth? Oh, as sentries are going down. And what's important is that Solar, he hasn't been bleeding out too many Roaches and Ravagers. It's mainly been Lings. Oh. NightMare, a bit of miscontrol, taking out one of his own Stalkers. Again, the pressure may be getting to him. As, again, NightMare is all in. Like, there's no other tech behind this. There's no other transition. He's been all in this entire time. The longer this goes on, the better it is for Solar. The Stalker army, though, is suddenly amassing. It's looking pretty threatening. He's up to 25 Stalkers. Ah. We can't afford to lose them, Papi. We have to be so meticulous, so precise with these Stalkers. The power behind this all-in is that you build them up over time. You preserve them. And now we're taking gases. Now, NightMare, he's trying to get out of this. Another Ling run by. He's going ham. Oof. No shield battery, no overcharge. Slow lots get cleaned up. As the army's forced back, Proxy Gateway has been exposed. Will go down. NightMare's trying to get into a more just gateway heavy composition, more than just pure Blink Stalkers. But now Solar has a fourth up and running. It's something that he's been lacking for a long time, but now he has it. Now he has a fifth on the way. And you can see that reflected in the supplies. Now that we have an entire base here for Solar, he's suddenly on the cusp of maxing out. Ah, the Bailings. Oh no! They're +2! Getting 4 probe kills. And now Solar, he can start moving out across the map. He can start being active. He is maxed at this point. His Lings, they come across the fourth. Lings actually even coming from behind as well. Set up a surround. Pick off even more of these Stalkers. And as we push forward, like, there's no splash damage, there's no disruptors or colossi or storms. It means that Solar just has the better army, the superior army. It's just more efficient against what NightMare has. I mean, NightMare, he is getting a fourth, which is pretty huge, but I may have jinxed it a little bit here. As the Lings arrive, and yeah, this fourth, it's not gonna get up and running. It's not gonna happen. As the fourth goes down, Bailings are rolling on in. Good force fields. Really good reactions out of NightMare. And controlling his hard out, he's going for a Zealot run by at the same time. Getting some drones. NightMare, he's fighting back as hard as possible, but it's kind of a numbers game at this point. The Bailings are rolling on in. Do we have a force field? We do have one! Bailings, they don't care. They force their way through that pylon. As here comes the rest of the army. The force fields that were used earlier. Overcharges pop, but the shield battery goes down instantly to the vials. And this is going to be the final stand of NightMare. Loses his mineral line, loses every single probe. And Solar is going to be taking the series 2-0. GG gets called. NightMare taps out, and Solar advances on to the semifinals. GG. And we expected an ace gate all in at some point this series from NightMare. He's very fond of it. It does make sense to try to whip it out on Ancient Cistern. It can be a little bit unexpected. It can catch the Zerg opponent off guard. And for the most part, he was getting damage done, right? He was killing the fourth. He was containing his opponent. If only he wasn't also losing so many probes to those Ling counter attacks. Like, when you're all in like that, you want to be focusing all of your attention on your all in, on your aggression, on warping in, on your army. But very wise of Solar to just keep going for these big lane counterattacks, crippling the economy time and time again. Not just crippling the economy, but forcing warp-ins, forcing the attention of NightMare back at home at every turn. And yeah, NightMare was pulled apart, and over time, Solar was able to stabilize, able to finally get his fourth base back up and running, get into better upgrades, and eventually max out, eventually overwhelm and just outscale NightMare in the end. GG, well played. We should also praise Solar because if you remember, it was a really clutch moment when he did go for the first big Ling counterattack. You do need those Lings back at home to defend. It's really difficult to defend without them, and the reason why Solar was able to pull it off is his queens. He had a wall of queens, and he was just transfusing his heart out, buying enough time for like roach reinforcements and Ling reinforcements to come in while his own Lings were across the map counterattacking. So that was a clutch moment, and if the transfuses were any worse, then NightMare punishes Solar then and there. He breaks through the queens, he gets on top of the roaches, and he may just win the game. He may just break the natural at that point, as he was pushing towards the natural. So that was a pretty decisive moment, and in the end, Solar was able to hold on and attack at the same time. GG, well played. And with that, we have our first semi-finals match ready for us. Oh boy. We casted Hero earlier. Hero, he 2-0'd Estrella. Likewise, Solar just 2-0'd NightMare. And now, our first semifinals is going to be Hero versus Solar. Let's go.